Good evening. I'm Kalamazoo Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, and welcome to the May 18 Kalamazoo City Commission meeting. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the city's Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can also listen on your phone by calling area code 269-552-6425 and entering meeting ID number 952-9401-6286 when prompted. And you may also leave a 3-minute public comment for tonight's meeting by calling area code 269-226-6573. And I would like to turn tonight's meeting over to City of Kalamazoo's Mayor David Anderson.
Thank you so much, Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, the new voice of the Kalamazoo City Commission meetings. First thing I want to do tonight is call this virtual commission meeting to order for Monday, May 18th, and ask Clerk Borling to call the roll.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Present.
Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Knott.
Here.
Commissioner Pradle.
Present.
Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. For our opening ceremony tonight, we have an invocation from Dr. Sunil John, Elder from Calvary Bible Church. Dr. John.
Thank you so much. Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come before you. And I want to thank you for each of the individuals here who make policy decisions on the behalf of the citizens of Kalamazoo. I pray that you would give them wisdom and discernment as they discuss things. Lord, I thank you for the rain that reminds us of your goodness and your grace to all of us, even in these times that are so challenging with the pandemic that all of us are facing. I just pray that during these deliberations, you would allow clarity of thinking and just a spirit of perception to be present, and that all these things would result in careful decision-making that is helpful for the people of Kalamazoo. Thank you, Lord, for the work that they do, and we ask these things in Christ's name.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tonight, we have an agenda that is in front of you, and for anyone that's watching, it's been available on the website. So commissioners, are there any changes you would like to see in tonight's agenda? Keep in mind that it's anything that is on the regular agenda will need to, on the consent agenda, will need to be moved to the regular agenda if you want to discuss it. Seeing no requests, and I guess with our virtual meeting, are we watching for any requests to move consent agenda items? Jeff Chamberlain?
We do not have any, sir.
Okay. Next item is communications. Are there any communications, City Manager Ritzma?
None, Your Honor.
Thank you. We are now down to public hearings. This is E on our agenda. And I would like now to open a public hearing to receive comments on an ordinance to amend the text of Appendix A in Chapter 50, the zoning ordinance, to allow adult use and medical marijuana uses. Is there a staff presentation on this item?
Mayor, I'm going to briefly indicate some changes that the staff will be asking the commission to make at this evening's meeting. These were follow-ups based upon the action that was taken by the City Commission last meeting. As you may recall, the commission approved an amendment that added as protected areas playgrounds and youth centers. We did not have a definition for those terms. And so what is being recommended is an amendment to add the definition of playground and a definition for youth center. Those definitions track exactly the same language that is used in the federal drug-free school zone statute. And therefore, it is my opinion that these are not material changes. They are clarifying amendments based upon what the action that was taken by the commission last meeting. And so you may adopt that amendment and proceed with approving the ordinance this evening. The other amendment to the zoning ordinance in regard to marijuana is to correct, I think, an oversight or make at least a consistency in the language that discusses adult use marijuana establishments. There is an exemption for safety compliance facilities. They are not subject to the setback or separation distances that exist between other types of adult use facility establishments. The intent was to also make safety compliance facilities on the medical side of the ordinance similarly exempt. And that language, for whatever reason, failed to get in the ordinance. So we're asking, for consistency's sake, that an amendment be added to also exempt safety compliance facilities from those separation agreements. Again, this is an amendment that, in my opinion, is not material. It is to treat safety compliance facilities that is going to be testing both adult use and medical marijuana, probably in the same facility. So this eliminates an inconsistency in the ordinance.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. So you are not suggesting that we need to make an amendment this evening to add those items?
Well, because there hasn't been a formal amendment, I will ask at the close of the public hearing, when you undertake to adopt consider the ordinance, that you make those amendments, that there actually be a motion to move those changes, and then acceptance of them, then voting on the amendment as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Robinson. Any other presentation from staff? All right. Well, now is the opportunity then for public comments, and I know Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, you're managing that. Do we have public comments on this item?
Yes, we do have some comments on the public hearing regarding the zoning ordinance amendments, and we'll play those, sir. Okay, we're queuing that up.
Good evening, everybody. This is Ryan Reedy, president of Reedy Group and member manager for 346 South Rose LLC, 139 South Edwards LLC, and 420 Labs LLC. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with my emails. And I know I am very persistent, and I do not mean to be in any way rude. We are just in a very challenging time, and I want to make sure that we do everything we can to optimize the opportunities, which I do believe cannabis is going to be an amazing opportunity for the city of Kalamazoo. I realize it's a scary proposition today, but as time goes on, I think it will be better managed, much like Colorado and other states where it is a good thing for everybody. Our goal is to request the City Commission to reinstate the CCBD property zone in the licensing for retail as proposed by the city and removed for simply administrative benefit. Two, we're looking for a safety compliance location license into the CBD so our companies can immediately invest in the downtown and create jobs. We believe this is a reasonable request because city staff and public meetings support CCBD for retail and consumption lounges. We're not looking for consumption lounges. And the reason for temporarily removing the CCBD was made without public input and based upon future zoning split without any established timeline. Public meetings supported adding more safety compliance locations throughout those meetings, and so did the staff that I've spoken with. Denying CCBD property owners retail license as originally proposed relative to CC zones would not be fair. The current lawsuit against the city has a provision that allows the city commission a delay, if necessary, for this exact situation. And I would also say that city staff have been making substantive changes to the ordinance after the planning commission adoption and after the first reading by the city commission. So the changes that I'm looking for from the city commission tonight, which would allow me as a property owner to benefit from the enormous opportunity cannabis will bring to the community, but also as a business owner to set up a safety compliant location within the city, which we're excited about doing. I understand that, again, this is a very challenging conversation and there's a lot to be concerned about where it could go. But I hope everyone would look at my 25-year history with the city of Kalamazoo, which I know some aren't happy with in certain ways, but I hope if you look at the total contribution that we've made in jobs and in the amount of people and traffic and the taxes that we pay and the businesses that we upkeep, we will do the same for this type of business going forward. So I hope you will truly consider what we're asking for and have the city commission make the choice that is good for its purpose, which is to create financial growth and to help and support our downtown businesses and taxpayers. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to your result. Have a great night.
Thank you, sir.
Hello,
Next,
my name
please.
is Sandy, and I'm a Kalamazoo resident. So I've reached out to the city and the community as much as I can over the past month to share my concern about allowing recreational marijuana dispensaries next to our children and families. Although I would like to restrict them even more, I'm trying to compromise and I'm only asking that we keep them away from our children and our families, specifically churches, parks, and drug rehab facilities. I believe I'm being very reasonable. I'm not sure what input the city has received that says we want marijuana businesses next to churches, parks, and drug rehab facilities, but everyone I've spoken with thinks this is a very bad idea. Now, I'm not naive, and I do understand that marijuana is in our community already. But that doesn't mean it has a place next to our kids. We are going too big and too fast with marijuana. I am concerned about our youth and the impact on public safety. I hope I have your ear on this very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Joey Kediboo, and my address is 730 East Court, Kalamazoo, Michigan. You may recall I have previously left messages during these meetings and voiced my opinion from a legal perspective and attorney in the cannabis arena that the city has broad discretion granted to it by MRTMA to implement any ordinance it deems appropriate to regulate, and I quote directly from MRTMA, the time, place, and manner in which adult use facilities operate. At the most recent meeting, the Commission took a huge step in the right direction to include buffers for playgrounds and youth centers, in addition to the previously existing buffers that protected schools and daycares. In my comments during previous meetings, I referenced the prior MMFLA ordinance adopted by this Commission, which protected churches and drug rehabilitation facilities. I think it makes sense to revisit protection for those two types of facilities. Medical MMFLA facilities with limited traffic due to only approximately 300,000 patients/customers in the entire state were prevented from opening near a place of worship or facility where vulnerable recovering addicts seek help as required under the buffers from 2 years ago. Alternatively, current adult use facilities in the draft can sell to anybody and everybody who is of age, increasing traffic and visibility right next door to any one of these facilities. In my mind, there seems to be some inconsistency in the regulations for this ordinance in this regard. When looking at it from this perspective, I just believe it is something that is worth revisiting and addressing if possible. The ability to expand the scope of buffers is not just limited to youth-oriented facilities. I cannot stress enough that MRTMA gives broad authority to municipalities to adopt what they feel are appropriate regulations in their particular locale, as municipalities throughout the state have already done. In addition to the buffers, I believe one other thing worth noting is how the leniency of the zoning ordinance buffers will be detrimental to the Commission's intent of promoting social equity. I think social equity is a very admirable thing, and I am in full support of social equity opportunity. But creating an environment that results in oversaturation only diminishes the value of the social equity partnership. Using traditional economic analysis, oversaturation results in price wars and nominal margins or profits. The current draft ordinance projects to result in 40 to 50 retailers. With 40 to 50 retailers, margins will be nominal and profits will be next to nothing. Assuming all 40 to 50 retailers retailers have at least one social equity applicant. What's the point of having social equity if the businesses are making very little? It makes sense from a social equity perspective to impose additional regulations so that the interest of social equity applicants actually yields profits and value. I'm not saying to limit it to the 10 or so that were previously MMFLA applicants, but I firmly believe that the current projection of 40 to 50 is way more than the cities can support. Thank you for your time and consideration. Have a good evening. Stay safe and God bless.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Omar Fakori, 730 East Cork Street. I wanted to provide some feedback on the marijuana zoning amendments. I've called several times from the last meetings, but just as a general statement, I think the ordinance has some of the loosest zoning laws regarding the location of adult use marijuana facilities. So one of the key elements of the ordinance is the social equity benefit. And I just think we need to be careful calling this a benefit to social equity, since that, anybody that opens will be one of about 50 dispensaries in the city. So 38 new ones, and I think there's 11 existing. That number might even go higher if you consider the distance between being reduced to 500 feet for some applicants. The market can really only support 15 to 18. And that doesn't even include the micro businesses and the consumption lounges that will also compete. Just some benchmarks. The city of Mount Pleasant allows for 5. Berkeley 3. City of Portage is really allowing only the existing medical provisioning centers to convert. Even the entire state of Illinois has capped it at 75 new dispensaries. So I think this is a very lenient, and likely going to result in an oversaturation of marijuana facilities. Now, I am glad the city has realized it does have broad authority to limit the location of where these facilities can be located, and have added public pools, playgrounds, and youth centers. Since these new additions, really target where youth are located, I'd recommend extending it to libraries, parks, and churches to continue with limiting exposure to youth. It just seems to go in line with the previous changes. In short, I'm glad to see some of the changes made since last meeting. However, I think the loose zoning laws are likely to hurt the industry and not really give social equity a chance to prosper with the oversaturation. But anyways, I'm thankful, for the discussion, the opportunity to speak. I'm happy the city is moving in the direction of adult use. I just think some minor tweaks would really make this ordinance stand out. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, that was the last comment received regarding the public hearing on the zoning amendment.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. So hearing that there are no comments, commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Hess. It looks like she's muted, but is there support for the motion?
Support.
Okay. I think you might have raised your hand, Jack, but I heard Commissioner Knott. So motion made by Commissioner Hess, supported by Commissioner Knott. Is there further discussion? Looks like Attorney Robinson is muted. There you go.
Yep, Your Honor, I would at this point ask that the Commission consider the amendments that I referenced at the beginning of the public hearing, to add the definition of playground, the definition of youth center, which are the same definition as appear under federal law, and also add that the safety compliance centers are exempt from the separation distances in regard to medical marijuana. And to be a little more specific, the amendment, the first one was the definitions would be in addition to section 50-1.3 definitions, add the definition of playground and youth center that would track federal law. And the other amendment is to be found at, this one's an amendment to section 50-4.4, use definition and standards. It would be subsection F regarding medical marijuana facilities, and to add the phrase except safety compliance facilities at F1B as in boy.
Attorney Robinson, so we have a motion made and on the floor. What's the choreography here in terms of this additional motion?
It would be to ask that the ordinance be amended in these two, by these recommendations, and that if the amendment is approved, then you approve the amendment, or they approve the ordinance as amended. Now, if you don't want to amend the ordinance, you don't have to, but it's recommended by staff that the amendments for playground and youth center be incorporated, and that we also make it clear that safety compliance facilities engaged in testing medical marijuana are similarly exempted from the location criteria, as are the case for safety compliance facilities testing adult use marijuana.
So commissioners, are you comfortable with the idea of amending the ordinance that we have in front of us based on the recommendations Attorney Robinson's made, and going ahead and taking that action now, and then getting back to our discussion on the original motion? Commissioner Urban.
I'm going to just simply move that those two amendments be added to the motion. And I just don't want to have to repeat the details of what Attorney Robinson said. We're going to trust Clerk Borling to capture all that. We've seen it written out, but I can't recite it verbatim.
And for the commission's information, the text has been provided to Clerk Borling.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Is there support for the motion?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cunningham. Any discussion on the additions? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes,
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
thank you. The motion passes. Now, back to discussion on the motion that was just made. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Pradle.
Guess I'll just take an opportunity to say that I appreciate the city staff, especially Christina and her team, providing some clarification on the proximity additions with the playgrounds, the community pools, and the youth centers as well, in terms of impact that has on sites. So I appreciate that. I think it's a good compromise from community input and just what we know needs to happen for purposes of social equity. Just wanted to thank Christina and your team for putting together some mapping for us to show that it's not going to cause significant impact, but it would cause a small dent in the number of sites that would be available.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradle. Other discussion? I don't think I'm missing anybody here. Is that correct? Okay, not to belabor this, but I just do want to mention that this is, we've been discussing this topic for a while. As everybody knows, we've had several community meetings over time, some of them organized by city staff, some organized by commissioners like Commissioner Cunningham. They've just been talking about this ordinance. We've had a work session on it. We certainly had our first reading 2 weeks ago at that meeting. So now we are at the point this evening where we'll be taking our vote on this ordinance. As the charter sets the how this works is that if we take action tonight, the ordinance itself will go into effect 10 days after tonight, which would be on the 28th of May, just a couple of days in advance of what we had set as our initial target date to complete this work of June 1st. However, it is the case that thoughtful people who are, deeply involved in the city and care about this issue, including, a businessman who's been doing robust investing and work in downtown Kalamazoo have, brought some concerns to us tonight, the last step of all this. So I just want to ask just for a moment, are in light of what you heard on comments or maybe in emails up to this, are there any thoughts you'd like to add, either Planner Christine Anderson or City Attorney Robinson?
Yeah, I understand the comments. I think that with the problem with the downtown is that we got kind of caught between our progressing that we were initially on schedule for. The Planning Commission initially approved 3 different downtown zones, and that would have normally gone to the City Commission later late winter, early spring. But we didn't have those meetings, and just 2 weeks ago is when the commission adopted those new zoning classifications for downtown. Because of those were pending before the City Commission, when this ordinance came to the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission held a lengthy discussion in terms of, does this make sense to permit marijuana facilities downtown when the central business district classification is going to be going away within probably months. And if we open up all downtown and saying you're eligible, then we may inadvertently create non-conforming uses where people will locate in a location that's in the CCBD, but when you apply the downtown 1, downtown 2, downtown 3 classifications, they may have a business located in a zone that's not appropriate. And so rather than step into that possible morass, the Planning Commission said, let's pull marijuana out of the CCBD classification because we know that downtown 1, 2, and 3 are coming. And so that was the rationale. And there was a lengthy discussion on that. And I guess we have to also credit the chair of the Planning Commission, Mr. Greg Milliken, who is a planner by trade. And he saw that and thought it would behoove the city to go slow. That's not to say that marijuana we've made the decision not to permit it downtown. In fact, that's entirely not the case because I can tell you based upon my conversations with Ms. Anderson that we're looking to see what marijuana businesses would best serve downtown and where should they be located. Should they be located on Michigan Avenue? Should they be located on the Kalamazoo Mall? Well, how close are they in proximity to the Central Library? How close are they to other, I guess you might call family type of venues downtown? Do we want them real close to the State Theater, for instance? So these are questions that we really have to grapple with, and that'll come as part of the public participation, getting all of the stakeholders who are engaged in downtown and getting their best thinking as to where these types of businesses should locate. So I apologize for the lengthy explanation, but I think you need to see the full scope of the problem. And with that, if I've omitted anything, I would I'd ask Planner Anderson to fill in the gaps.
I think you covered it. And that process, the downtown process, we're working on getting it started right now and hope to start engaging the community in a couple of weeks, first week in June.
Thank you, Planner Anderson. I mean, I think all of us recognize that these are challenging times in so many ways. And so it is, I understand the sense of urgency related to someone who's been devoted to business here in the city of Kalamazoo, and understanding that plans that he may have had, for example, in downtown as few as 3 or 4 months ago may have been totally upended, and hoping that the city can recognize that and work accordingly. Planner Anderson, do you feel that we will be able to move with all due speed and intent in attempting to address these zoning districts and go through the process and further consider something that we had not been considering, I don't think, before, which is locations for safety and compliance facilities in the downtown area?
Right. So to touch on your last point first, originally only retailers and consumption lounges were discussed, but safety compliance had never been discussed for downtown prior to the last week or so. As it relates to speed, I think that it is something that we are able to achieve this summer. We're coming up with our public participation plan that will allow for access, both for those that have internet access as well as those who don't, who want to work in person, want to work on paper. So we're making sure that we're being as inclusive as possible. And we have some very clear questions that we need answered. The Plan Commission helped start the process with the creation of the 3 new districts. And now, it's refining those and mapping them. And so we have a start of the conversation. And I think that, by early fall, we should be able to have something in front of this board.
Thank you, Planner Anderson. I guess one last comment on this, just not drag it out, although I already am, I guess I will admit, is that I'm certain that all of us sitting here voting on this do not feel that this is an absolutely perfect ordinance in every single way, but we certainly are in one of those situations where we have desires and interests that are in some ways on both sides of this issue. And we've been dealing with that for some time now. So I guess what we try to do together is find a way to be sensitive to that and as much be fair and listen and thread the needle. And I hope to think that's where we've gotten on this. But at this point, now is the opportunity for us to finally take a vote on this one portion of our work, which is the zoning ordinance. Any other comments? Clerk Borley, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you. The ordinance is adopted. Next is an opportunity for public comment on any items on the regular agenda. Are there any other general public comments? Do we have any public comments tonight? And DCM Chamberlain, is there still an opportunity to call in if people want to do that?
Yes, sir. People can still continue to call in as long as you have this period of it open up until the consent agenda. Let me take moving forward on that.
Would you be so kind as to share that phone number one more time?
Sure. The telephone number is area code 269-226-6573. And we do have a 3 comments. And just to let the commissioners know, there were 2 comments that we weren't sure if they were duplicates or not. So we are going to error and play both of them. So.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Linda. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. I did vote against the proposal that you're discussing on marijuana tonight. I have 2 issues on it. One, I'm an asthmatic. I live in a complex, Regency Square. They advertise that there's no smoking. I've been here for more than 15 years, and I have people above me, the last 3 people they've rented to, smoke pot. They smoke cigarettes. I get cigars. I get vaping. I have developed chronic heart issues because of the exposure to secondhand smoke. They 3 weeks ago, they started smoking pot openly upstairs above me. And my question to you is there anything that you have concluded it anywhere, and I've looked, that stops them from using in an apartment building and they have to go out 25 feet like the American Cancer Society recommends? And it's not fair to seniors. It's not fair to asthmatics. And we have a higher ratio of asthmatics, both in kids and adults nowadays. And you need to protect another class. You just can't give these people rights and then have them take rights away from somebody else. And I hope you have dealt with that. I haven't seen it in anything that is written, how you're going to enforce where they're allowed to smoke or anything like that. So I hope you address this, and I'm looking forward to the hearing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Brian giving you a call here. I'm a resident of Kalamazoo County, and I was just going to give a public comment for the marijuana ordinance. My address is 555 South Drake Road, Kalamazoo, Michigan 49009. I just wanted to provide my feedback on the marijuana law that the city is looking to pass. As background, I was given an opportunity to become a general manager for a medical marijuana dispensary in the city earlier this year, and I couldn't be more excited. However, I do have a concern about my growth prospects within the company. If the market in the city becomes too oversaturated, by having so many dispensaries in the community, it's obvious that these businesses will be forced to operate on low margins, compete on pricing, and also will not be able to provide any mentorship, training, and growth opportunities that I would have received. I just wanted the commission to realize that this ordinance doesn't help people like me, and it won't help new entrants either. I was really counting on a long-term career and a development of my skills. And I'm just concerned that this ordinance may limit my growth. I appreciate your consideration, and thank you for what you guys are doing for the community.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda. I've been in a city resident for 25 years. I live in a Westnedge Hills apartment complex, and I've been here 15 years. I have a couple questions, and you guys need to consider and put this off for a while, especially with the coronavirus. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm a senior. I had asthma, and I've spent 3 years, actually 5 years now, putting up with smoke, and the tenants above me right now vape, and they did pot the last couple weekends. And they're young people. They don't care about that the apartment complex says there's no smoking. But I've had a lot of Mickey Mouse games played on me with the apartment complex and with the tenants that live above me. And it's sad that I have to put up with this virus now. It's also caused me some chronic medical conditions. So I don't see anything in your ordinance or any of them saying where they can smoke this. In the consumption lounges that you are referencing, I don't see a reference to how many cigarettes or however it's sold that they can smoke there. There's a legal limit for alcohol. You can check with Kalamazoo Public Safety, but I've read articles where they said they stopped people who were high. So I think this is going to add to that. Where's the legislation to protect people, especially for the recreational use, protect seniors and little kids? Asthma's on the rise in this country. It's not. And we have a lot of low and medium income people, and those little kids, those seniors, and also other adults that have asthma. How about the chronic conditions like kidney disease and stuff like that? I guess I'm going to be running out of time here, but I think you need to stop and address these issues, and this is a good time to do it. My pastor at church talked about a resurrection, that maybe we're having to pause and reevaluate our values of society and who we want to include. Recreational use, I don't go for. I'm sorry. I voted against it. But if I'm being impacted with a community virus, an international virus, a federal virus, there should be laws to protect me. I have a right to fresh air before anybody has a recreational use. The American Cancer Society, you should look at the feet. They are recommending, last time I read up, it was 21 feet from a common area. Maybe there should be some legislation. You need to address put off the virus till the virus stuff is taken care of and we find out more, because it just adds to the dynamics that's going on in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. DCM Chamberlain, I understand that was the last comment. So I want to kind of remind us, it's a little different with our virtual meetings. That was the opportunity for people to comment on something which will come up on our regular agenda, which will be after our consent agenda. But since things are a little out of order here, just while it's fresh, Attorney Robinson, would you be prepared at all to talk about state law as it relates to recreational marijuana? And I could be wrong about this, but I believe that there is a limitation as it relates to public consumption of recreational marijuana.
Yes, there is. The statute that was adopted by the voters says that the act does not authorize consuming marijuana in a public place or smoking marijuana where prohibited by the person who owns, occupies, or manages the property. So the caller that was complaining about neighbors, and if there is a no smoking, although I would, again, I'm not the attorney for the housing complex, but I would probably want to make sure you're defining smoking in terms of tobacco and marijuana. But if there's that type of prohibition, that's something that she can enforce as a matter of her lease. And so that's really where that enforcement lies in regard to private property. The city doesn't do too much in terms of only regulating what you can do in a public place. As far as the separation distances, yes, there is a local county ordinance that requires so many feet away from windows and doors to a building or a public building where people may engage in cigarette smoking, but that is tied to the state law regarding cigarette smoking. And I think the Attorney General has given some advice that in terms of smoking marijuana, because of the statute in regard to standing away from doors and windows, talks about smoking tobacco, and it doesn't address marijuana. So that separation distance requirement isn't applicable to the adult use marijuana law. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The city can prohibit it in public places, and private property owners can prohibit it on their property, and it's up to them to enforce that prohibition if they choose to do so, or if they choose to put some type of prohibition in place. But again, because of the difference in tobacco and marijuana, you probably would be well advised to make it clear that you're prohibiting both types of consumption. And now, again, if you're prohibiting smoking of marijuana as permitted by the statute, that doesn't preclude individuals for consuming it in other fashions, by edibles or by creams or whatever.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Next is the consent agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
We have 7 items tonight for approval. First is the approval of a sole source purchase in the amount of $115,275 with Solterra Group LLC of Newark, Delaware, to purchase odor suppressant chemicals. Next, we have adoption of a resolution approving the settlement of a dispute with AT&T that will result in credits to the city's accounts in the amount of $157,071.16. Next is the adoption of a resolution confirming the 2020 assessment roll. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving the request of the Downtown Development Authority to levy a tax rate of 1.9638 mils. Next is the adoption of a resolution supporting pursuit of any needed approvals and funding to design and build US 131 interchange as recommended by Michigan Department of Transportation. Next is the acceptance of a 2020 grant award in the amount of $39,749 from the Office of Highway Safety Planning for pedestrian and bicycle safety enforcement and education. And finally, acceptance of the 2019 Bulletproof Vest Grant Award in the amount of $25,756.92 from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, The requested action is to approve items 1 through 7 and to authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there such a motion?
So moved. This is Commissioner Knott. Oop.
Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Knott,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Urban. Is that right? Did I miss that?
Well, somebody else did it though.
Your Honor, I believe it was Commissioner Cunningham.
Supported by Commissioner Cunningham. Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Pradle,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The items on the consent agenda are approved. Next is H, our regular agenda. There's items on this regular agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
Item H1, adoption of an ordinance to amend Chapter 20B of the Kalamazoo City Code to provide for the permitting and regulation of adult use marijuana businesses.
Commissioners, the recommended action is to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So
Motion
moved.
made by Commissioner Urban. Is there support for the motion?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cunningham. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. City Manager Ritzma.
H2, adoption of a resolution establishing a social equity policy for marijuana businesses and adoption of a resolution setting the annual fees for marijuana business operating permits.
Commissioners, the recommended action is to adopt the two resolutions. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, is that Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Yes.
And support Commissioner Hess. Is there any discussion?
Yes. I would like to make an amendment. I would like to make an amendment to Part B, zoning code exceptions, sections B1 and B2 of the marijuana social equity policy, to add in, and I quote, an applicant or a majority of the applicant owners is an African-American city resident for the 3 years prior to applying for marijuana business permit, end quote. And I'm asking that in hopes to add a larger pool of applicants to take advantage of the zoning exceptions.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Is there support for that motion?
I support it.
Commissioner Urban, there's support. Discussion. Commissioner Cunningham made the motion. Do you want to?
No, like I said, I think that this provides a larger pool of applicants. And as we look at the medical industry, maybe they're looking for those type of opportunities also.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Cunningham. Any discussion from any commissioners?
Mayor,
Commissioner Knott.
does either the Ms. Bonner or the city attorney have a report regarding this amendment?
Attorney Robinson?
While I appreciate the position that Commissioner Cunningham has taken and where he's and what is motivating this proposed amendment, it is my advice that the commission not adopt it for the reason that it makes a classification based on race and therefore is unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. And if adopted, we would likely end up in litigation on the matter. And I don't foresee us prevailing on that issue, given the jurisprudence of the U.S. Supreme Court on classifications based on race.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Do you have any other questions for the attorney, Commissioner Knapp?
Sure. So City Attorney Robinson, if this amendment were to happen, what does it do in terms of the lawsuit that the city is facing right now?
What impact it would have on the current lawsuit?
That's correct.
It wouldn't. That the current lawsuit is really aimed at the argument that because you're an established medical marijuana facility, you should be permitted to open as an adult use, even though the city has said, no, we're not going to permit adult use at this time. And it has nothing to do with the social equity component of the law.
But perhaps I'm mixed up. So we've passed the ordinance. This wouldn't then be a substantial change to the ordinance?
This is only addressing the social equity policy. Now,
Okay.
if the commission should adopt this, we would probably have to go back and look at the zoning ordinance that you had adopted a few minutes ago. And if, in order to make the two, the policy and the ordinance dovetail, and this would be a significant change, and it would delay the operation of that ordinance for 2 weeks. And we are under the gun, so to speak, in regard to the current lawsuit, because the judge is holding a hearing tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and he's going to make a ruling based upon what takes place at tonight's city commission meeting.
Okay, so it would have some impact if we made a substantial change.
It has that potential, yes.
And then one last question, I think, for me for the moment. Is there any legal precedent where this has happened and courts have weighed in previously?
Well, there's a variety of cases, usually in the contracting venue and in the education context, of granting preferences, if you will, based on a suspect classification. And the courts have uniformly struck those down. The key cases, as it concerns Michigan, were the two cases that challenged the admissions requirements for the University of Michigan, in which the court said that the undergraduate approach was unconstitutional. However, the law school's approach, and the way it considered race, was okay. There have been subsequent decisions by the Supreme Court that have basically continued that same thinking in terms of how far can a public entity go in considering race or sex in making these decisions. Again, it's called the strict scrutiny test in terms of when you make these classifications based on race, they are disfavored, and that has to be the only narrowest way to achieve a social good. And at this point, it's a little hard to say that by making this classification based on race, that is the narrowest way in order to, if you will, make these social equity policy benefits available to residents of color in this community.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Other discussion? Commissioner Pradel.
I've had the pleasure of knowing Commissioner Cunningham for some time, and I know that you are an incredibly thoughtful person, well-researched, well-thought. You ask questions, you talk to people. You know very well that there's a giant mountain hurdle in front of the feasibility of this if it passes. But I think what I wanted to just elevate is that I think you knowing that, hopefully more than anything, just shows of how important you think this disparity is, and how for too long, disproportionately, people of color primarily African Americans, have been disproportionately impacted by marijuana laws and enforcement. And how much that matters to you as a person, how much it matters to the world that we know, both in our community and at greater lengths. And I guess I just want to just lift up and elevate how much I appreciate that courageousness. And irregardless of how the vote goes, just know how much I admire you and your work and how much you've tried to do to lift up this as we've had the discussion about recreational marijuana in our community. Whether it's putting together a forum to make sure that predominantly African Americans can learn about opportunities to get involved in the industry, or whether it be this proposed amendment. I think it's courageous, and I think I thank you for it.
Thank you, Commissioner Predel. Commissioner Urban.
Well, I'd just like to add that since there was unfairness in how this law was enforced, to now say that it's fair to ignore the discrepancies in treatment that and opportunities to earn a living from this business are now being largely foreclosed. The social equity proposals that the state has put out have good intent, and I think they're laudable, but they really are not terrifically significant. What Commissioner Cunningham is proposing really adds real meat to the notion that if we're going to do social equity work, this is the serious way to do it. And I admire his courage in putting this forward, knowing that it's going to be an uphill climb. You say, well, when will we take on this issue of lack of equity and treatment toward people who have been oppressed in this country? We've been waiting for 70 years at least. As a nation, the people of color have been waiting since 1619. So when will we finally take this seriously? The question is now, is this the issue on which we want to really press the courts? The fact that we're dealing with a somewhat morally questionable industry to begin with, it doesn't seem like this is the best horse to ride. But I sure hope that because of this discussion, we will be emboldened to look more thoroughly at other opportunities to correct imbalances in how people are treated relative to how they've been treated historically. So I made the second of this motion so we could have this discussion. I'm not prepared to vote for it because I see that it's going to be maybe too problematic for the scope of it. I would rather have it be on some other more generally so wider opportunity. But as I said, when will be the perfect time? People could say this maybe not be perfect, but let's start now. That's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Hess.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Jack and Chris, for bringing those up, and I agree with your thoughts. And I would echo that, and I would also say that in this economic time, Attorney Robinson, correct me if I'm wrong, but the fees for such a climb, such a monumental climb as this, would be excessive, and to be absorbed by the city in this time would be a great difficulty, financial difficulty. That should not be a reason to not address race. I agree with both Commissioner Predel and Commissioner Urban. And I do look forward to the day when we have this greater conversation. And and really seek equity for all. And let those mechanisms that have been put in place in Kalamazoo actually do their work.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Vice Mayor Griffith.
Yes, I have a question and then some comments. To Attorney Robinson, you had commented that potential addition of this could change or have impact on the zoning ordinance. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate or on what type of changes that would cause for that.
You're muted, Commissioner Robinson. I mean, Attorney Robinson.
Thank you. The zoning code that you approved has baked into it separation distances for people who qualify under the social equity program. And so if you're adding one more category of individuals who would qualify, we might have to, I have to look at the ordinance, but we have to look at those setbacks for social equity. I think we've defined it as individuals who who live within certain census tracts, and if you've got a prior criminal conviction for a marijuana offense, not including delivery to a minor. So we've written the social equity pieces into our ordinance. If we want to expand it, and that's why we went very carefully in terms of treading the ground that we could, so as to give the benefit to those individuals who we felt the statute was aimed at, but without drawing lines on the basis of race. And so if we do that, like I said, it's problematic from a constitutional point of view, but we would have to work that into our zoning ordinances, as well as one more category of people who would be permitted to take advantage of the reduced setbacks. So that would cause us to look at the zoning code. And that is, again, it can be a question is that a substantive change in terms of adding a whole new category of individuals? And I think it is a borderline call, but I think to me that it would be a substantive change between those group when adding a third category into the ordinance. And that would, I think, stall the action by not meeting our June 1st deadline, and that may cause some problems in the lawsuit.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Yes.
And I wanted to just comment, to echo some of the comments of my fellow commissioners. I have the utmost respect for Commissioner Cunningham for bringing this out. For anybody watching or paying attention to what's happening right now, this is a lot. This is not something that we entered into lightly. This is not something that we take lightly. And I appreciate my colleagues for the questions that have been asked and the things that have been lifted up. And Attorney Robinson and Director Bonner for all the work that they put in to this ordinance and trying to make sure that within reason for the legalities that the state of Michigan has for us, that we're able to appropriately have some sort of social equity. It's very unfortunate that we're constitutionally bound where was the constitutional consideration when disproportionately people of color, specifically Black people, and I'm saying that for what's happened in our community specifically as it relates to cannabis convictions and arrests and so on and so forth. That went on for years, continues to go on with nothing but words. And so where do you get to the point, at what place do you push for change for these things? And as a Black woman, I can say, there's always, not this time, there's always probably this next issue. And we look up and years have gone by and we see the devastation, the utter devastation, the impacts that it has on communities. And then you have these opportunities to try to affect change. And so for that, like I said before, I have tremendous amount of respect for Commissioner Cunningham for taking that bold step, because the truth of the matter is that is exactly who has been disproportionately impacted. And to say anything else would be a falsehood. And so I don't think anyone is denying that fact here. We're very clear on what that's looked like for this community. So yeah, it's just a lot. I just really wanted to say that, and for the community to make sure they are clear on what's happening here. And for anyone, regardless of what happens with this vote, you know, there are things at the state level that need to be changed. These are these issues that come up when you have a municipality who might really want to do real work, who might really want to say, I want to do the right thing. So then in 5 years, in 10 years, when we look up some of these issues of equity are a little bit more balanced. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it with that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Griffin. Anyone else? Commissioner Cunningham.
So, you know, for the general public, I've had the opportunity to meet with all of my colleagues, minus one. And during that opportunity, I made sure that city staff was present so that my concerns weren't voiced from a one-sided slanted view. And in reality, I think that it was consensus that, you know, what I was stating, they were passionate about also, everyone at each table. But to Chris's point, I'm very thorough in my work. I do want to change the optics here before, I don't have many comments to say. I'll save them for commissioner time. And I'll give further dialogue then. But I do want to change the optics on one piece, as I have spoken with Clyde numerous times prior to our meeting 2 weeks ago, with the intentionality of making sure that we do not go past that due date. And every single time I have gotten a solid answer that no, this would not be a substantial change and it would not require us to go into an additional meeting. So to hear that tonight is concerning to me. But you know, like I said, I've had the opportunity to talk with each one of my colleagues. I respect all of them. I think they are all on the right side of justice. But this is just an opportunity where I couldn't let it pass. And like I said, I'll reserve the rest of my comments for commissioner time.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Anyone else? So just a few comments from me here. So when I have thought about this moment, which we have all known was coming here tonight, I feel that when I was searching for a word to describe the position I was feeling like I was in, I guess the word I would use is I feel like it's heartbreaking. And the reason, there are multiple reasons. One of them is that I have known Commissioner Cunningham for many years now. He's a man of total integrity, for which I have a great deal of love and respect. Second is there is an indisputable fact that there is an existing inequity which has been generational, not just in this particular arena, but in every arena. And lastly, Commissioner Cunningham's process was transparent, comprehensive, and inclusive. Nobody was surprised. Everybody clearly understood the exact approach that Commissioner Cunningham was taking and why, and he gave us an opportunity to all participate in that discussion. So that all said, we all know, I believe, that as a country, that as a city, and as an organization, we have a lot of work to do on issues of race. So that's one reason why we've taken, a modest step, but a step all the same, to create an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at the City of Kalamazoo, which was recently created and now staffed. And that office is going to help us do the work that is so important to all of us and important to us here on the commission. So we are committed to doing that work as we look inward to the city staff and outward. And I know that we'll soon have a presentation about how that work will progress here, I'm sure, from our director, and I'm looking forward to that. Clerk Borland, will you please call the roll?
On the amendment, Mayor Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
You're muted, Commissioner.
No.
Commissioner Knott,
No.
Commissioner Pradel,
No.
Commissioner Urban,
You're muted, Commissioner Urban. Is that Urban, is that Commissioner Urban frozen and muted? I don't see him anymore.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
That is 4 noes.
Commissioner
2
Urban's
yeses.
back, Clerk Borling.
Commissioner Urban,
You're muted, Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Urban, you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
No.
Yes.
Well, I was disconnected from the audio for about 4 minutes there, so I missed what the mayor was saying. So I really feel awkward about saying anything right now, having not heard what the mayor had been saying. So I'm sorry. We had I don't know if the rest of you had a break in your feed, but I did.
So are you requesting that I make my comments again, Commissioner Urban?
Well, if you could summarize them, I guess that would be helpful.
Well, I sort of, I hate to subject everybody to that, but unless someone objects, I can go ahead and do that. Okay with that? All right. So the comments that I made, Commissioner Urban, were related to this amendment, the vote we're taking now. And I described how the word that came to me about this particular moment was, it was heartbreaking. And the reason were multiple. Commissioner Urban.
Somehow your audio isn't coming through to me very well. If everybody else can hear it, then I'm just going to have to just be quiet and not comment, because the sound is going way down, and it sounds like there's an echo coming from underwater back to me on my set here. If nobody else is having that problem, I'm just going to have to just decline to comment.
I'm not so sure as he knows we're voting.
You know that we're in the middle of a vote, Commissioner Urban?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So we are in the middle of a vote. Everyone has voted but you.
Okay.
Clerk Borling was calling the roll. So, I mean, as an accommodation, I guess I will go back and make my comments again if you would like.
No. If the vote's all the way through, I'll cast my vote as well.
Clerk Borling?
Commissioner Urban.
No.
Thank you, commissioners. The amendment failed. Now we are back to the original amendment Is there discussion? I mean, original motion. Is there discussion on that? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, Clerk Borling. The motion passes. Now we are down to reports and legislation. City Manager Ritzman, do you have a report?
Yes, I do this evening, Your Honor. First, I just want to acknowledge the announcement that was made Friday and over the weekend about furloughing several of our employees and participating in the job share program that the federal government and state have provided through this COVID crisis. And I just asked our CFO, Steve Vicenzi, to speak about the little bit of the details covering that, as well as our overall budget situation as we look forward to the remainder of this year and what next year may bring.
Thank you, City Manager. CFO Vicenzi.
Evening, Commissioners. Let me just share my screen here real quick. Let's see, sorry. Can everyone see what's in front of them? My presentation? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I'll start with our current budget impacts. About a month ago, I gave you all an update of where we were estimating and thinking where we were going to end up with our budget impacts for the year. The state on Friday had their second revenue conference of the year. What came out of that was an update to our revenue sharing. We've discovered that we have a revenue loss from revenue sharing in the current fiscal year 2020 of about $440,000. We're anticipating 2021 to be a shortfall from our 5-year budgeted plan of $634,000. Those were actually a little less than originally anticipated. We were anticipating about 20% across the board, which would have been 500,000 and 1.5 million. So in a way, our projections were pretty good, and yet we received some better than expected news. We still remain unchanged in the remainder of our projections, with projected loss in permit revenues of 450,000, projected loss of parking enforcement revenues of 100,000 for the year, and reductions for charges and services of about $205,000 for the year. All that totals up to about a $1.2 million for the general fund, which is about 0.5% of our total general fund revenues. It does not necessarily sound like the largest amount, however, it is very impactful on all the services we do try to provide throughout the year. Getting into how other funds are affected, our streets funds in total are we received an update from MDOT at the end of April. We're projecting a $1 million loss in our Act 51 funding. And that's the funding that comes through the state from gas and vehicle registration taxes. And so that is a significant portion of the budgets that we have for our streets every year. Utility funds, our water and wastewater, we're still analyzing on a monthly and weekly basis of what our bills are looking like, what our delinquent accounts are looking like. So far, we have yet to see any real material changes in that. However, we do stand ready to make adjustments if we start to see any trends change as we go forward. And then just kind of jumping into the work share program that the city manager kind of teed up for me here. On Friday, we had an announcement that we'll have a reduction in staff hours for about 25% of our city workforce. This program allows city employees to keep working to continue to provide the services for our community that we've come to expect. And it also allows us to have their paychecks protected during this time period. You know, as far as the employees that are reducing hours, we are not affecting frontline public safety, water, wastewater, streets employees at this time. Work they do is extremely important and needs to continue. We do expect this program to allow us to see about $506,000 in savings, and that is split mostly between two funds or three funds. Our utility funds are expected to see about $80,000 of that savings, and our general fund is expected to see about $420,000 of the savings. And then the remaining amounts go to kind of our other non-major funds. And I just kind of wanted to highlight as well that this program will provide us the flexibility with our budget this year to find a way to find some cost savings that's a little less painful than the normal cost savings that we have to find, to give us more flexibility as we move forward as under these uncertain economic times. No one knows for sure when things will open back up, or when they do, how long it will take us to return to normal. As I kind of highlighted earlier, we've seen the effect of revenue sharing, not just for this year, but for next year as well. So the more we can do now, the more flexibility we will have in the future when it comes to, whether it comes to reducing services or finding other ways to be creative with our budget. So I guess that is the update I had for you tonight. Does anybody have any questions on anything that I've presented?
Questions, commissioners? Thank you very much, CFO Vincenzi. I do have a couple questions. How often is the state doing these updates now?
They do 2 revenue conferences per year as part of their budget cycle.
Okay.
There was discussion that they may do a 3rd one this year, depending on how things progress the rest of the year.
All right, appreciate that. And when you're talking about work share program, the terminology for that also was furlough. Is that right? I think there was some reporting in the press that was described as furloughs.
Yes, this can be referred to as a furlough. The way we are handling those furloughs is through the work share program, which works through the state and the federal government to also help supplement employees' wages that would be decreased by the furlough.
And what's the time frame for that at this point?
So right now it would be from today, May 18th through Friday, July 24th. So
Is that driven by the opportunity that's available, or a time frame that we chose?
Largely by the opportunity that's available through the federal fund, through the federal funding and the CARES Act. And then that also gives us the time to kind of look and react to, as we have our buildings open. Well, right now they're not open, but as they begin to open through a phased implementation, will allow us to continue to bring those employees back at a reasonable pace.
Thank you so much. City Manager Ritzman, anything else?
Yeah, just to add on to what Steve said, we are looking at reopening city facilities on a limited basis beginning June 1st. What that looks like right now is limited hours for the public to have access to city services through our facilities. And the hours that we're looking at are 9 to 3 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday from noon to 6 p.m. and Friday 9 to 1 p.m. These hours were worked on together by myself, county administrator, and area supervisors. So these are standard hours that all the jurisdictions will be using for the time being until we can get ramped up to back to where we were before COVID.
Thank you, Manager Ritzman.
Express my thoughts and concerns. I asked the city staff to be present so that they can make sure my colleagues understood the gravity of my ask. When I reflect on our Imagine Kalamazoo results, also known as IK 2020, which is one of the largest and most comprehensive surveys our community has ever done, our community asks that we find ways to address social equities in our community. This specific legislation, voted and approved by the people of Michigan, and overwhelmingly called for it, and overwhelmingly across the state in Kalamazoo called for social equity. And the state identified us as a qualifying city for a social equity policy. I can only imagine a few reasons why my colleagues voted no. One being because they're optimistic and believe our policy will obtain social equity. Two, financially, it wouldn't be fiscally responsible during this time. Three, my colleagues believe this isn't a situation where we should go against the law to achieve what's best for our community. And then, four, is this the right issue? And my thoughts to that is there are a million different issues that needs to be addressed. I say one at a time, and also we should highlight an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. I think it's telling when the racial minorities on this commission thinks this is the appropriate time. What is the right item to take up that fight to my colleagues? That's a real question. I believe it's this and that's a heavy statement that we have to continuously address. My sentiments to those concerns is I look at this legislation through a lens of an African-American male who has endured and seen the impact of over-policing in our community as it pertains to cannabis. The data reflects that every racial demographic combined is less likely than African-Americans to be arrested and charged with cannabis. And that includes my Latino brothers and sisters. And that's combined. Reality is financially, I think that's a heavy, heavy, heavy question we have to ask ourselves. And I think that is a determinant that really should be thought thoroughly through. But I also believe we could have found someone in the community to donate the projected $50,000 in attorney fees to protect what may be viewed as illegal. But reality is the industry is still federally illegal. So I feel a way when we fight for one and not for the other. But as I always say, this is chess and not checkers. And my colleagues and the city staff have to continue to have these hard conversations in and out of our comfort zones as a team and try to find the best path forward. So I expect deeper dialogue around our economy as we navigate COVID-19 and getting our community back to work. I also ask that our media outlets not focus in on writing a column concerning my amendment tomorrow, but focus in on the opportunity that we are now taking part in. I also ask that you reach out to an individual named Ed Genesis on Facebook and join in on his conversation tomorrow concerning the industry so that we can further educate ourselves and individuals at large. And those are all of my prepared comments. The other piece that I wanted to speak to was we lost a young gentleman in our community, Vontae Griffin, who was infectious. I mean, his personality was large. You knew that he was bound for greatness. Whatever it is that he touched, he was going to be successful. This individual lost his life to gun violence. And I'm asking that our community continuously hold these conversations, continuously respond, continuously act. I know that we are, but I just want to continue to encourage you. I also want to send my prayers and my love to all of those who loved and admired Vontae Griffin. I'm sorry. And those are all my statements.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Someone else like to make some comments? Commissioner Urban?
Well, I'm a little distressed that my feed to the commission got cut off right at the very time when it would have been most helpful to have heard all that was going on and even realize that a vote was being taken. I'm distressed about that, but I don't know what to do about it because I feel I was only half a participant.
Okay, so That's noted, and I'm certain that there's maybe some further discussion will have to happen in terms of what that means when we're having virtual meetings. Other comments, Mr. Urban?
None.
No. Okay. Commissioner Hess.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Cunningham, for your courage and your wisdom and your voice. This is indeed a watershed moment. And this is only the beginning of this discussion. And I look forward to further discussion with all of us and to working with Director Bonner, moving forward with a plan in this community. That said, May is National Mental Health Awareness Month. We can talk about COVID and how it has affected our mental and emotional health, our well-being, our families. We can also talk about the greater picture of how it's affected our communities of color. And coming out of this, there will be a greater awareness of the inequities in not only this community, but in this country. There will be a greater conversation, and I look forward to being a part of it with all of you. I think we do have, Commissioner Cunningham, I think we do have mutual trust and respect for each other on this commission. And I think it's important that, that we take this seriously, especially in Mental Health Month. Then that said, let us continue to social distance without creating emotional distance. There are so many ways to reach out to another. Think of folks that may be alone at this time. Reach out to them on a daily basis, a weekly basis. Reach out to those that you know could use a helping hand. So that said, as we talk about returning to normal, and we are not coming back to normal. And I look forward to working with all of you, city staff and commission, in creating what that new normal is going to look like in Kalamazoo. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Knott?
Sure, thank you. So earlier today, there was a tele rally, if you will. It's our new reality, I guess. And it was talking about the fact that next Wednesday, May 27th, is the deadline to sign the petition sponsored by Fair and Equal Michigan. It's a ballot campaign that's circulating to get signatures. Now they're circulating electronic petitions due to COVID. But the purpose of this petition is to amend our state civil rights law known as Elliott Larson, to expand it or modernize it to include sexual orientation and gender identity. This is an effort that has been going on in the legislature dating back to 1983. Every legislative cycle has ended with no motion or movement, bills referred to committees, and then they die without an up or down House vote or Senate vote for that matter. The closest we got was back in 2014 when we actually moved a bill in the House out of the committee, but nothing had happened any further than that. So now the people have devised a ballot campaign and they're collecting electronic signatures, and I'm asking for everybody to go to fairandequalmichigan.com and sign that petition if you haven't already done so, and ask your friends to do so as well. This is, again, a citizen's petition. If the ballot initiative is successful and collects enough signatures by May 27th, the legislature will have 40 days to take up the people's bill. If not, it will go before voters in November. And again, this is an effort that's supported by dozens of mayors, including Mayor Anderson, businesses large and small, as well as philanthropy and other kind of heavy hitters. And if you saw that rally today, I guess I would like to lift up my work colleague, Janice Poindexter. If you don't know Janice, she's a force to be reckoned with. She's a trans woman, lives in Detroit, works for us at Equality Michigan. And she talked again about, this isn't just about housing discrimination or being fired from your job. It's about life and death for her and for the folks that she works with and advocates for on a daily basis. So again, I'm asking you, we haven't passed a resolution as a commission on behalf of this nonpartisan ballot initiative, but if you have a moment, please go to fairandequalmichigan.com and sign the petition. It only takes a minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Commissioner Pradel?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to take a minute just to lift up and just recognize people in our community and across the country who are being laid off or facing income insecurity right now. It's a really challenging time for folks, including many of my colleagues who I work with on a daily basis, who are hardworking people who love their jobs, who would love nothing more than to wake up every day and do the mission-driven work that they do. And so just encouraging the community to hold each other up right now, because we're going to need that, not just with resources, but just motivation and referring people to opportunities, because we have to get creative as a community to, as Commissioner Hess said, to find our new normal and to make sure that everybody can still have a home here in our community, including those who may no longer find themselves employed. Wanted to take a minute as well just to also lift up Commissioner Urban. I think I speak for all of us on the commission and those in the staff who want to send our sincere condolences to you and the loss of your beautiful wife, Carol. Just want to let you know that we're thinking of you and the entire Urban family, including Sam and Ben and Iwa and Anya. You know, can't imagine the loss of that close of a loved one, but especially during these COVID times. And so please know you're in our thoughts and prayers. Wanted to take a minute as well just to let people know that the last ranking of the U.S. Census has Michigan ranked in 4th for returning responses. We are just behind Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. That doesn't mean necessarily that people can just kind of rest back and not respond. With population loss in Michigan, we need people to respond from our state now more than ever as a state. And so please encourage our neighbors to do that. Also wanted to just take a minute to thank Planner Anderson, Director Bonner, City Attorney Clyde Robinson, just for all your work on all things related to our 2 ordinances and the social equity plan that we passed here tonight. I know that you poured your heart and soul into it, and I don't think people from the public necessarily see all those nights that you are away from your families and the things that you love to be present to hear from the public and receive input and put up with us and put up with a string of people calling you today. So just want to thank you all for all you've been doing with that. Again, just wanted to thank Commissioner Cunningham for your courage in bringing this up tonight. I don't think there's a single person that takes that vote lightly, and just know that my respect just has grown immensely for you from this. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention, hopefully next month we'll be bringing a resolution about Anti-Bullying Month in June next month. And with schools out and lots of social networking interaction with our youth, it's just a really great time as parents and as leaders in our community to provide information and guidance and helping our youth understand what bullying is and the detriment it can cause to each other throughout life and the trauma it can cause to people in life. And so for all those who are trying to teach at home or however we're doing it right now with our youth, please really take an opportunity to really educate on anti-bullying and why it matters, especially in our community. And I know that the JABS organization that's hopefully we'll have the resolution for next month is not able to do a lot of events they normally would do because of COVID, but it's still an opportunity for people to do our own education at home and with our kids. So that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes, I want to just say a few things. We're in day whatever of COVID, but just reminding folks as it's getting probably a little bit more something you're getting used to, it's still definitely a factor. Remember to wear your masks when needed, be kind to folks, and thank you to everyone who is out here still working. And as people get ready to integrate back into work. Also want to echo some of the comments of my fellow commissioners, thanking city staff for all of the work that went into this ordinance that was done. Nothing was done lightly. And yes, there's plenty sleepless nights I'm sure they had. It's definitely appreciated for all of this hard work. And I just want to end by speaking to anyone who's part of any sort of marginalized community or ever been marginalized at all. When you're in a position to be in a space to affect change, whether that be sitting on a board, on an elected position or any other space, there's this sort of, I don't want to say pressure, but it's like you're gonna be the one to change the situation for us, and you've got people, expecting you to be the one to change things. And I think what happened tonight is a really good example for the community to see that it's not just that easy. And I echo the comments of Commissioner Cunningham. Hopefully no one steps away from this with any ill feelings towards anyone and what their intentions are as far as creating an equitable society here in Kalamazoo. But as Commissioner Knott just lifted up, there's still work that needs to be done within inequities. And there are always opportunities, and we need people on the ground. We need those organizers. We need people to push for the change so that when people are in these positions to make change and they're willing to go that mile, the change can actually be done. So the work continues. We're here for it. I'm here for it. I hope everyone's taking care and well.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Griffin. I also want to just take a moment to recognize Carol Urban tonight. Obviously, Commissioner Urban we share time together on this commission, but way before we knew each other, your wife, Carol Urban, served on the board of a fairly young modern dance company in Kalamazoo, Wellspring, which is a dance company that my wife, Corey Terry, started. And it just reminds me of how interconnected we are in our lives here in Kalamazoo. And I really want to recognize Carol. She also was very involved. Was it called Public Media Network when she was involved with all that work in terms of trying to make sure that people had an outlet to share their desires, thoughts, and dreams on our public media that we still support here. And I believe, Commissioner Urban, you are the representative from this commission to that organization now. So longtime community participant, supporter of organizations, really want to recognize all those many years and all that good work that Carol devoted to this community, in addition to raising some wonderful children who also are involved here around town. So thank you, Carol, and I echo Commissioner Cradle's comments for you, Jack, tonight. On another front is that I think that these are sober times, and it is requiring all of us who care and want this world to be a better place to be serious and to move through these times that we're all experiencing together with a deeper reflective recognition of the work that we still need to do to make sure that this is a community of hope and opportunity for everyone in Kalamazoo. So please, as we continue to move forward, keep your hearts open. Love you, Kalamazoo. We're adjourned.